There are lots of ways that professionals can be of help to their clients. For example, you help a person when you create an atmosphere where they feel comfortable, safe, and free to tell you what's on their mind. And sometimes you help others when you give them the information that they need.
Well, let me try.
When there's an interaction or a series of interactions initiated by either the client or the professional where helping takes place, the term helping interview is used. This program on the helping interview is designed to give you some of the basic information needed to conduct this type of interaction. There are two general types of helping interviews. In the first, the goal is to gather or give information. In the second type, and the focus of this program, the goal is to assist a person in exploring, understanding, and clarifying an area of personal concern. Most of the techniques used here are also employed in long-term counseling. The depth and breadth of the interview depends on many factors, including the caregiver's education and personality. Some people are, by nature, better at helping than others. But almost everyone, regardless of ability, can improve the quality of their helping by learning new information and by practicing certain skills and techniques which have been shown to be of value. Helping professionals can develop personal qualities which favorably affect the helping interview. Frank Williams, who teaches counseling skills, discusses these qualities.
I teach communication skills to freshman students. When discussing helping interviews, I found it's difficult to talk about personal qualities and make it meaningful. So what I do is let students see video clips of clients talking about professionals who they thought were helpful and then tie in the qualities.
I felt she really liked me and wanted to help me. Really was interested in what was bugging me. I felt I could really talk to her.
What this client felt was the helper's warmth. It's hard to define what warmth really is. Some say it's a liking for the core of another person. I believe warmth is a manifestation of a person's caring and concern for another. But warmth is not just a person's internal makeup, it's whether or not the person conveys this feeling to others. Warmth is usually communicated through one's facial expression. A caring look, a smile, through a gentle tone of voice, and sometimes through physical closeness and touching.
Some of those other nurses were so high and mighty, they can't be bothered with you. But you know what? She didn't hide behind that uniform though. She was for real.
What this patient seemed to sense was the nurse's genuineness. Genuineness is being real, showing another person that nursing, as with other helping roles, is something you do, not something you are. That the uniform is not a defense against being known, but just a symbol of your job. Professionals with genuineness would not be afraid to admit when they make mistakes.
I'm sorry, my mind got off track when you were telling about your family situation. Could you tell me about that again?
That person would be honest with the client. I think this is hard for many of us because often a client expects us to be a little more than human and have all the answers. And sometimes we too are unrealistic and expect that of ourselves. Another way you see genuineness is the congruency of people's words with their behavior. A genuine person does not say one thing verbally and contradict it by either facial expression, tone of voice, or body position. Being genuine is important for caregivers because clients may not have had sincere, authentic communication and interactions with family members or other significant individuals in their lives.
Some of the things that were bothering me were pretty personal. I hadn't been able to talk about them with anyone, but this counselor seemed so open about everything that I felt okay talking to him.
Openness. This term usually describes individuals who are not afraid to let their thoughts, feelings, and motives be known to clients. To be able to be open, one must have high self-esteem, to the degree where one doesn't fear being rejected by the other person.
She was really nice. I liked it.
I personally believe being open also includes having a sense of humor and not taking oneself too seriously.
And she's so large.
When you are open, it makes others feel comfortable so that they may be open as well. In this way, caregivers act as models, tacitly giving their clients permission to be more open themselves. Being open is a little risky for most of us, for it means that we may receive input from clients that's unsettling or conflicts with some of our values.
I'm actually a little bit uneasy with where we're going with this.
Openness also includes telling the client when a subject is making us uncomfortable. It should be remembered too that discretion is necessary. Openness refers to candidness in the helper. It does not mean the helper should disclose personal information or skew the interaction to discuss his or her own affairs.
The nurse always seemed to be right with me, really knowing what I was saying and feeling. What I thought was important, she thought was important. When I was sad, she seemed to sense just how sad I felt.
What this nurse had was empathy. It is perhaps the most difficult and many believe the most important of the qualities to develop. Empathy is the ability to temporarily enter the client's frame of reference, to perceive the situation as he or she does.
Yeah, I just felt very uncomfortable.
This means that the caregiver must put aside her own frame of reference for a time and attempt to enter the client's world.
It made me feel very uncomfortable.
A world of feelings, which are probably not the same feelings the nurse would experience in like circumstances. A world, then, which may seem strange and foreign to her.
I felt like they were all looking at me and judging me.
Accurately tuning in or empathetic listening to the patient's feelings, however, gives the helping professional an understanding of the person that she could not get from any other source. Most experts believe that empathy also includes the ability to communicate this understanding back to the client. So in their opinion, empathy involves two skills, both understanding and communication. A person skilled in empathetic listening and responding will contribute to the client's sense of safety and belief that he or she is fully understood.
As you can see, personal qualities are important factors in the helping process. After Frank talks to his students more about these qualities, he likes to play two other videos that convey attitudes which he believes are essential.
He didn't always agree with me, but he let me have my say. And I always felt he really gave some thought to what I said. We were equal. We were both working on this thing.
Here we are talking about respect. A helping professional communicates respect to clients in many ways.
Everything else is feeling okay?
Some are simple matters of common courtesy, listening to them without interruption, addressing them by their proper names, asking for their opinions. But true respect for a person is a more profound quality.
You know, I believe this is happening because God is punishing me.
It's there when the client's values and religious and cultural beliefs are accepted by the helper, even though he or she may not agree with them.
So you thought that they were all angry at you?
It's there when the client's perceptions and point of view are acknowledged, even though the helping professional may have a different perception of the same event. Respect is belief in the client's personal worth and ability to solve his or her own problems.
He always made me feel that I still had control. They were my decisions. He never pressed anything on me. He answered my questions, but he never told me what to do.
Basically, this man is talking about his autonomy. The helper did not try to run his life for him. This is especially important since one of the roles of the helper is to empower a person as much as possible.
If I do go back to work,
I think caregivers can only allow a person his autonomy if their identity is not dependent on interfering or running other people's lives.
6 weeks or something, I'd like to.
It's also necessary to face reality. Recognize that the only person one can really control is oneself, and sometimes even that is not possible. After discussion of the videos, I tell the students how difficult it is to separate and define the qualities and attitudes because there's a lot of overlapping between them. Openness and genuineness, for example, have many behaviors in common. I also tell them that I don't believe they can just go away from the lecture and practice the characteristics, because they are really the result of a person's total life experiences and feelings of worth and self-esteem. But what they can do, now that they know what attitudes are essential, is to become more aware of themselves, their motives, values, and feelings, and how these affect their interactions with others. And I also urge them to learn behaviors that help them convey warmth and empathy, qualities they often already have, but which they may need help in expressing.
There are many external factors that are also important in a helping interview. Sue Reiner, an occupational therapist, discusses some of them.
I work in a medium-sized community hospital. Often I have an interview with patients before they're discharged. During this time, I try to determine how much they've learned about their illness and treatment and then help them make plans for their care at home.
Usually I set up a specific time for the helping interview. I feel that setting a time kind of formalizes the interaction, makes it obvious that the meeting is not just social. Of course, you can have a productive interaction on the spur of the moment, but setting a definite time is ideal.
I've set aside about 15 minutes so that we can go over this.
I tell the patient how long I've allotted for the interaction. This helps both of us. The patient feels important because a certain amount of time is being devoted to him. And at the same time, it helps me because he's less likely to extend the interaction past the time I have available. You need privacy, so if a patient's in a 2- or 3-bed unit, I have him meet me in an empty office. If I can't do that, I pull the curtains around the patient's bed. If I'm using an office, I move chairs or equipment if I have to sit next to the patient. I've found that if there's a desk or something like that between us, it takes away the feeling of equality I like and puts too much distance, both physical and psychological, between us.
Yes, I'm having a session. Could you hold my calls, please?
To cut down on interruptions, I notify the people at the desk that I'm going to be interviewing and to not call me for a while.
I strongly believe that the physical surroundings, the milieu that the professional provides for the helping interview, influences the interaction. A set time, a quiet room, no physical barriers, few interruptions. All these give better results.
Attending skills, too, are behaviors by the professional that play a vital role in a helping interview because they convey warmth and concern to the client. Dolores, a counselor at a drug rehabilitation clinic, discusses 3 of these skills: positioning, eye contact, and observing.
When I first came to work here, we had in-service classes for several weeks. One of the things they taught us was the importance of positioning ourselves when counseling.
I was a little skeptical at first, and then I got interested and read some articles. I'm now convinced that a helper's body position can either enhance or detract in an interaction. When I first started paying attention to my position and trying the different techniques, I found it felt a little artificial, but I kept practicing and now it's more or less automatic.
So you really feel angry?
Whenever possible, I try to sit so that my eyes are level with the client's. This way, I can easily see his face and he can see mine. This position also lets the client know, at least symbolically, that we're equals. The incline of the body is also important. One study I read showed the clients thought listeners who leaned forward were more attentive than listeners who sat upright.
Throughout the interview, I try to be as relaxed and as natural as possible. I also tried to avoid distracting mannerisms or gestures, like foot tapping, that clients might see as impatience.
I make frequent eye contact with the client. It's a way of showing attentiveness and a positive attitude. Observing is another attending skill. Lots of times, I can draw some inferences about the client's point of view by observing him. Often, his grooming and posture give me an indication of how he feels about himself.
And then there's his feeling state or affect. Does he look unhappy or depressed? Does he cry easily?
If I'm having trouble sensing the patient's feeling state, I ask myself, what would I be feeling if I looked like this person? An interesting thing that I've learned is that when a helper observes a client attentively, the client's verbal output actually increases.
I'm just sitting around, maybe watching TV or something.
In my experiences, I've found this to be very true.
Listening is the 4th attending skill and probably the most important. Ella, who counsels clients in several halfway houses, discusses this.
Believe it or not, listening is probably the most important thing that I do. I know that if I actively listen to clients, it encourages them to say a lot more.
And just hearing themselves. Sometimes that's enough for them to understand their situation better and reach some decision. When I interview, I listen for indications of what the person thinks and feels about herself and about others in her life, especially significant others.
Oh, one more thing about my boss. He must have a problem about my personality.
So it feels as though your boss just doesn't like you.
I also try to figure out how she perceives others as thinking and feeling about her. Does she see other people as adversaries? Or does she feel that others like her and will help her?
Do you feel like there are other people in your life that you have the same problem with?
Also, if a person has a specific problem, I try to determine what she believes it really is, her feelings about it, and who or what she thinks is causing it. Throughout an interview, I listen for repetition, Some subject mentioned again and again may signify a problem that is immediate and definable.
Maybe that really has to do with my sister.
Whereas, if the client is talking about many subjects and feelings all at once, it's likely that the problem is either unfocused or particularly difficult or painful for the person to identify. I also listen for themes that keep coming up. For example, one of the clients told me he hated high school because the teachers picked on him. He went on to trade school and told me he was unhappy there because some of the shop teachers discriminated against him. And now he's convinced that his supervisor is out to get him.
You know, it's like, I'm not doing it fast enough, I'm not doing it the way he wants it done.
There's a real theme here. How significant it is, I don't know, but I suspect that he takes this picked-on attitude into many of his life situations. I also listen for variations in the form of speech, as well as the content and feeling. For example, a change in the volume or speed of speech suggests the person's getting anxious or doesn't want to talk about the problem. Sometimes, a shift in topics occurs because the person feels he is revealing too much, or because the subject is too distressing to him.
There was something else I wanted to talk about.
Occasionally, what appears to be a shift is not at all.
It's like, I come home after working all day.
The client will unconsciously put two unlike topics together because, in his mind, the topics are intimately related.
Actively listening to a client, getting the content and feeling behind the message and the variations in his speech, all this is hard work and demands concentration. And sometimes I find myself not listening. Something the client says triggers a thought, and before I know it, I'm talking and focusing the interaction on myself. I remember something from a book I read on interviewing. The author wrote, "In most cases, the success of an interview may be directly proportional to the number of words not spoken by the caregiver." I try to keep that in mind.
This concludes this program. Program 2 will discuss some other vital areas such as opening the interview, the use of questioning, and the use of silence. Program 3 will conclude the series by addressing therapeutic responses and closing the interview. Good luck in your efforts to help others.